Hello, you haven't heard from me for a while, have you? And probably wondered what on earth I was doing. And I have been, to some extent, in a place of overwhelm. And this is how a lot of my clients feel as well, children, teens, mums, dads. And I expect you're sitting there thinking, or even rushing around thinking, yes, yes, I know what you mean. Overwhelm, yes, definitely feel that. So, what I'd like to do is give you some ideas of some ways to tackle overwhelm. So the first one is really if you use your arms out in front of you to make a sort of circle, if you like, as if you're sort of hugging the air, really, of sort of that size of overwhelm that you feel, because that can be a good way rather than going into your head to just instinctively put your arms out. How big is my overwhelm? I mean, goodness, my arms are quite wide. They're wider than my body out there, like I'm hugging Father Christmas. And if that's the size of your overwhelm, now just take your arms in a little and think, what would it take for me to reduce that overwhelm just a small amount? Actually, I'm finding myself wanting to breathe. So go with your instincts. It's best to keep out of your head and just go with your intuition, because that is so much more powerful. So I'm thinking, yes, some breathing would be good. You can probably hear it in my voice. I'm breathing from actually quite high up in my chest. So take your breathing down into your belly. Do some belly breathing. Really exaggerate it. So, can you hear how my voice has gone down a little? My breathing has gone down. And actually, I feel I can draw my arms in a little bit because already the overwhelm feels a little bit less. So now take your arms in a little bit less again. Think, okay, so what more could I do that would perhaps reduce my overwhelm? And I was talking with a client, this last week actually, I think, or may have actually been the beginning of this week, doesn't matter. And he was very much in that sort of space of overwhelm, so much to do, sort of child, wife, family, work, etc. And so what we were talking about was delegate, dump, and do. You've probably heard of those. So, what can you delegate? What can you get maybe one of the kids to do for themselves? Because this does boost self esteem actually when the kids take on some sort of responsibility, even if it's of, I don't know, cleaning their shoes, making their packed lunch, bringing down their washing, putting it in the machine, taking stuff up. Get them involved. There's stuff you can delegate. And when you delegate, you empower, rather than thinking, oh, I can't ask them to do that. They're so tired, or they've got their homework, or they've got exams, or whatever. Think of it, though, as empowering them, because this is how they feel important. They feel they have some responsibility. They've been asked to do something, and they like to do that. It depends, obviously, how you ask. But if you ask in a sort of way that's be really helpful, really appreciate it. Could you possibly do this, and that would be great. So you can delegate some things. Um, there's lots of things you can delegate, I'm sure. Sometimes delegate might mean to subcontract, in the sense of, maybe if it's like your accounts, can you find sort of a bookkeeper who could help you, or an accountant? Can you delegate in terms of well, delegation in a sense could be buying a ready meal, couldn't it? Or just sort of offloading that responsibility so it's not on your plate, literally. um, are there things you can dump? Are there things you can say, actually, that's not necessary? That I don't need to do that? I mean, it's cold, maybe you don't need to do the ironing because it's going to be under a jumper. Maybe there are some parts of the house you don't actually need to clean. Maybe there are some jobs at work that you don't need to do. Maybe there are some things you don't need to organize. Maybe there's some things you can dump. It's very hard to dump things, isn't it? You get used to doing them and you think, oh yes, that has to be done. But when we think I should do this, a good way to think about dumping is to say, turn your shoulds into coulds. Is it actually a should? Is it a must? Is it an ought to? Or actually, is it a could? I could do that. Maybe I could do that, but I could do it later. I don't have to do it now. I could do it later instead of something that I do every week. Maybe I could do it every other week. Just think about, and that doesn't include things that are for you. Make sure you actually parcel off that time for things for you as well. And then obviously there are things you could do. So is your circle maybe a little bit smaller? So now what I want you to do is just look at that circle in front of you. What are those individual things? We call these chunks. The circle is, if you like, the big chunk, the overall picture. Now look at the small chunks. What are the small chunks? Can you maybe get a piece of paper and just write them down? What are the sort of areas of chunks? Sort of home, work, relationship, kids, list kids. And then chunk it down still further. Maybe look at that list. What's the most pressing? And then, give it a score out of 10 for how important that is to do. And then think about, instead of what you need to do, what is your compelling outcome? What's your desired outcome with that thing? What's the bigger chunk? So we're sort of taking the bigger picture, which hopefully is smaller now, looking at the individual chunks, and then what you do for each chunk, just chunk up. What's the purpose here? Why am I doing it? What's the overall goal? What's the end thing? So it could be that you have a child who's struggling with something like sort of anxiety or low self-esteem, or you have a child who's not very well. What's the overall end goal with that, with what you need to do for that child? And think about, and this is really, the love languages. Maybe you've heard of those. What will make her feel loved or him feel loved? What's the overall end goal here? The love language could be quality time. Maybe, and this is what happened with the client last week, that, he needed to spend time with his child, but he was on his phone all the time because of work pressures. What would it take to just put that phone to one side and just spend some time talking to his son for a short time? Because all that happens when you're trying to sort of do two things is, in a sense, neither get done terribly well, do they? At least that's what I find. So just give the quality time. Kids, you think kids want presents, want gifts and things, but every time I do a sort of love language exercise with a child, and there's a great book, I can't remember who it's by, I'm afraid, but Love Languages for Kids, to look at, what actually matters to that child. And it's almost never gifts. They say, they want to go shopping, they want to get this, they want to get that, sure. But actually, what makes them feel loved isn't that gift, it's those words of affirmation. So words of affirmation would be, oh, you really tried hard with that. I really noticed, you're really improving on this, or well done, you're such a good boy, or such a, kind person, or whatever, words that make them feel special, make them feel appreciated and loved. Or is it hugs, touch, just touching them on the shoulder and saying, well done, thank you for that, giving them a hug, giving them some eye contact, smiles. Quality time is so important to children, spending that time with them. So when you've gone down to your small chunk up on that particular one to say, what's the purpose of it? What do I actually want from that? And already, I think if you look in front of you now at that circle that we had, you're going to find that actually it feels a bit more manageable, because maybe you've got some priorities, maybe you've got some end goals with those, maybe things are a bit clearer. If this isn't the case and you're still feeling overwhelmed, tapping is amazing. I'm always going on about tapping. So if it's something that, if you're still feeling really overwhelmed, now let's go to some EFT. Think about where in your body you're feeling that overwhelm. Close your eyes, look down to connect to it. What's the color? What's the size? Scale of 0 to 10, 10 being incredibly overwhelmed, almost can't cope, intense. 0 obviously being it's gone, in which case you wouldn't be doing it. Okay, so give it a color, a number, size, anything about it. Is it like sort of pulsating? Is it sort of like a sicky feeling? Is it, what's it like? Then put your left hand up, I would say, and then tap on the side of your hand. That's the fleshy part between the end of your finger and your wrist. And then just say, even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I love and accept myself anyway. And we do this 3 times. Even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I love and accept myself anyway. And then again, even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I love and accept myself anyway. And then tap through the fingers, just squeezing the either side of the nail bed. Overwhelmed, feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. And breathe. Feeling really overwhelmed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Mention the color, maybe green overwhelmed, brown overwhelmed, whatever, yellow overwhelmed. Just tap, sorry, excuse the dog barking in the background there, wanting to come in. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling overwhelmed. And then think of a colour that for you represents feeling clear, feeling you've got clarity, feeling like you can cope. And then put your hands to your heart and just breathe in that colour. Take it right through your body, that colour for feeling calm, feeling able to cope. Yeah. Just breathe that through your body and then open your eyes and get on with your day. So I hope you found that helpful. Okay, bye.